This conference will now be recorded.
So if you guys have, that's why if you type in the chat box, that'll probably be better than just talking with our mics. All right, so we're going to start off with deciding on a research topic. So choosing something that both interests you and fits with your teacher's assignment instructions is the first step to deciding on your research topic. And I just want to stress how important it is to be sure that you fully understand all of your assignment instructions. I recommend reading through your instructions several times and then double checking that as you're working on your assignment, just going back and making sure that you're meeting all of your teacher's requirements. Your topic is going to start off broad, and that's perfectly normal. You choose a broad topic and then you narrow it down. So some examples of a broad research topic that might be appropriate, for an academic paper are global warming, mental health, Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson book series. You could write an awesome research paper on that, I promise. Or a historical topic, the Civil War. Some teachers will tell you to choose a topic that you are passionate about. Some teachers will tell you to choose a topic that you are not passionate about. Either way, just make sure that you choose a topic that you don't already have your mind made up about. You want to approach your topic with an open mind so that you're not going to end up with a biased final product. You don't want to write a biased research paper. I also recommend at this point in your academic career that you steer away from topics that could potentially be offensive. An example might be politics, which is very polarizing. So I do recommend at this point just steering away from topics like that. The next step after choosing your general topic is going to be the literature review. And the literature review is when you start looking for information available on your broad topic. And this is a really important step in beginning to narrow your topic. So as you're doing your literature review, you want to take notes on how other researchers have approached your broad topic. You don't want to copy another person's work, but you can use their research and ideas to decide what you think about your topic and what your own original approach to the topic is going to be. And when I am researching something, I first look at an encyclopedia entry. Wikipedia is a totally fine place to start your research. I do a lot of local history research, so a lot of times I will go to Encyclopedia of Alabama and see what's been written on my topic, just to get a general understanding of the topic. My next step is typically to do a Google search. And you want to go past page 1 in your Google search. You want to do, look through the first 3 to 5 pages of a Google search. And then, while you're doing your literature review, you're just seeing what's out there. So click on some articles, read through them very quickly, skim them, and then save whatever articles you might think you want to go back and look at. And then my next step would, of course, be to visit the library's website or contact a librarian at your local library. We're always happy to help assist you with your research. But you can look at our website online, you can look through our catalog and see what types of books are out there on your topic. And if you go to school, if you have a school library, you can also see what books they have available. If you go through the literature review process and find that there just isn't a lot of information available on your topic, then you have to come up with a new topic. Otherwise, it'll be just a very stressful project. Does anybody have any questions about the literature review process? Okay, we're gonna move on. So next, I have a quick video for you. And if you guys are able to hear it, just type a yes in the comment box for me, okay?
Meet Jenny. Jenny has a research project due in a few days. She picked a topic when her professor first assigned the project. She chose her favorite TV show, Bridezillas. It seemed like a good idea, but now that she's doing her research, she's having a lot of trouble finding sources. She's freaking out. Jenny's problem started with her mental model of the research process, which she sees as a one-way street. Like many students, Jenny thinks that once a project is assigned, she should pick her topic right away. Then she can move on to finding sources and reading through them. And once she has all her sources, she can start writing her paper. But the research process is a lot messier than that, and picking your topic is intertwined with finding and reading sources, and writing and editing your paper. Picking your topic is research. When you first pick a research topic, it isn't set in stone. It's just an idea that you test with some exploratory research. If it looks good, you find and read some more sources. At this point, you might find that the published research leads you away from your original topic. That's okay. You can let the research you find guide you and tweak your topic a bit. And by the time you've gone through this cycle a few times, you may find that you have enough sources to start writing and editing your paper. Even then, as you're writing, you may find that you need to pull in additional pieces of information, and you may return to the research cycle. So let's wind back the clock for Jenny, bringing her back to the day her professor assigned this project, and allow her to do it again with this research model. Again, Jenny picks a topic that is interesting to her, the reality TV show Bridezillas. As she tests the topic with some internet research and in article databases, she discovers that there is lots written about it in the popular press, but not much scholarly research, which her professor requires. Realizing that maybe her topic is a bit too narrowly defined, Jenny decides to tweak it by broadening her scope to reality TV in general. But when she tests this new topic, she winds up drowning in a sea of research, all of which has to do with reality TV, but doesn't tie together to help her form a coherent thesis. Back at the drawing board, she wonders if there's a happy medium between Bridezillas, which is too narrow a topic, and reality TV, which is too broad. Since Bridezillas is just one of several reality TV shows about brides and weddings, perhaps there's more written about this subgenre. Testing this topic in some of the library's research databases yields a promising but not overwhelming number of results. Instead of realizing too late that her topic was unresearchable, Jenny built in the time to test and tweak her topic, so she could take her original idea and shape it into a topic that she still finds interesting and can realistically use for a short research assignment. If you want to know more about the research process or about how to pick a good topic, ask a librarian for help.
Okay, so what I want you to take away from this video is once you choose a topic and start to narrow it down and formulate your research question, it can change. This process is totally fluid. It will change if you're doing it right. So don't be afraid to go back to the drawing board and rewrite your research question as you learn new information about your topic. Does anybody have any questions about the video? Okay, so we have a quick activity. I just want you to take a minute or so to write down some topics that you think are interesting, and then pick the most interesting topic, and then write down a few keywords. So my example here is prohibition. That's my broad topic. And then my keywords are temperance movement, 18th Amendment, Women's Christian Temperance Union, Speakeasy, and Roaring Twenties. So that's just an example. And if you want, I would love to see what your topic is and what your keywords are, if you can type them into the chat box. So I'm going to give you guys, let's see, we'll pick back up at 10:44. So just a couple of quick minutes. Okay, does anybody want to share their broad topic? Oh, Percy Jackson, that's a good one. So Samantha sent me a message saying Percy Jackson, and can you guys think of any keywords that would be good to search with when you're trying to narrow your topic with Percy Jackson? I would say maybe young adult literature would be a good keyword to search. Let's see, Percy Jackson is about Greek mythology, is that right? So Greek mythology might be a good keyword to use. Can anybody think of any other keywords to use for Percy Jackson as a broad topic? Oh, Lord of the Rings is a good topic too. World War II, that's a good one. Oh yes, and these are great keywords. Bismarck, nuclear, war crimes, blitzkrieg. Absolutely. Renee Watson. Who's Renee Watson? Tell me more about Renee Watson. What are some keywords to go with her as a broad topic? She's an author. What does she write? What type of literature is it? Novels, fiction novels? Yes, okay. Steve Jobs, that's a good topic. I'm sure you can find quite a bit about Steve Jobs. Any keywords that y'all can come up with for Steve Jobs as a topic? Apple, that's a good one. Awesome, okay. All right, we're gonna move on to our next topic today, which is narrowing your focus. Narrowing the focus of your research topic is a super important step in the research paper writing process, and it's also sometimes the most challenging step. You want to identify a research problem within your topic that you're going to address in your paper, and you want to have your own original approach to the topic. And that's why we do the literature reviews, so we can see what's out there and we can find out what our own take on the topic is going to be. How many of you have written a thesis before? Okay, so Joe's written a thesis before. So your thesis is just the answer, is simply the answer to your research question. So for example, my research question is, did laws related to the sale of alcohol after the ratification of the 18th Amendment cause crime to rise in Huntsville in the 1920s? So that's my research question. And my thesis is the answer to that question. So my thesis is, the rise in violent crime in Huntsville in the 1920s was a direct cause of prohibition laws brought about by the ratification of the 18th Amendment, which prohibited the sale of alcohol. All right, any question about that? Okay, we're going to move on to anatomy of a research question. Okay, so there are questions you can ask yourself as you're writing your research question that will help you craft the very best possible research question. And the first question is your research question clear? So you want to read it over and make sure that you are providing specific information so your audience understands all of the components of your research question. And the next question is your research question focused? You want to make sure that your topic is narrow enough that you can cover it thoroughly in your paper. So for example, if your teacher has assigned a 5-page research paper and you want to narrow your topic enough that it can be covered, you want to narrow your topic enough that it can be covered thoroughly in 5 pages. So it has to be pretty narrow. Can't really fit a lot in 5 pages. Next, you want to ask yourself, is your research question concise? So you just want to make sure that you are using as few words as possible in your research question while still getting your point across. Next, is your research question complex? Now, if you can answer your question with a yes or a no, it's not complex enough. If you can find the answer to your research question with a quick Google search, it's not complex enough. And lastly, is your research question arguable? So your research question needs to be open to debate. It cannot be accepted fact. So how the solar system operates is an example of a complex subject, but the answer to that question is accepted fact, right? Do you all have any questions about this aspect of narrowing your research question? Okay, Eden, can you type your question into the text box, to the chat box? Okay. Eden, your I can't hear you microphone. So if you could mute it for me. Oh, I'm gonna go ahead and mute it, Eden, and then if you don't mind just typing it into the chat box. Okay, what do you mean by arguable? Okay, so if your research question is using my solar system example, if your research question is how does the solar system work? Well, science has already answered that question, right? Also, how does, gravity is a complex topic, but science has pretty much already answered that question. So it's not really an arguable topic, right? But then there are some topics that are open to debate, right? Like, for instance, global warming. A lot of people do not believe that global warming is a thing that is happening. A lot of people believe that global warming is a serious problem. So that is an example of a topic that is arguable. Does that clarify things a little bit for you, Eden? Okay. All right. So now we're going to look at some strategies for narrowing your topic. All right, so strategy number 1. You want to look, if you can just look at one aspect of your topic as a way of narrowing it. So my topic is prohibition. So looking at an example of an aspect of my topic might be crime during the Prohibition era. Number 2, can aspects of your topic be broken down into smaller components? So looking at using prohibition as a topic again, you can break it down to a Prohibition era law. You can look at a specific Prohibition era politician or a Prohibition era activist. Number 3, can your topic be narrowed geographically? So if I wanted to narrow my topic, prohibition, geographically, I could narrow it down to just looking at Huntsville, Alabama, and how prohibition affected Huntsville, Alabama. Next, can your topic be narrowed by time period? So you're basically just looking at a specific time frame. I can look at 1919, the year that the 18th Amendment was ratified and prohibition went into effect. And then last but not least, can you narrow by type? So if I wanted to look at, if I were researching the effect of global warming on animals, I could look at a specific type of animal. And then number 6, can you narrow by relationship of one aspect to another? So can you make a comparison? For example, crime in Huntsville in 1910 compared to crime in Huntsville in 1920. Okay, do you guys have any questions about that general information? We're going to do an activity to kind of help you understand this a little further, because I realize it's a little bit, it's a lot to, it's a lot of information. But does anybody have any questions before we move on to the examples? Okay. All right, so down here in the corner, I have my strategies listed. Okay, so let's look at the first question. Question 1A is my very broad research question. And then question 1B is my narrowed version. So question 1A, what are the effects of global warming on animals? So that's just, you could write volumes and volumes of books on that question. But looking at question 1B, what are the effects of global warming on penguins living in Antarctica, a cold climate, versus the effects on penguins living on the Galapagos Islands, a warm climate? So penguins live in both places. We can compare the two. So what strategies have I used here to narrow this question? Can you identify any of the strategies that I've used to narrow the question? Yep. Yes, temperature. So I have created another aspect of adding the temperature, cold climate versus warm. We're comparing the two. Yep. Geography, I've narrowed it down to the Galapagos Islands and Antarctica. And then penguins. Yep, specified penguins. Good job, guys. All right, so let's move on to question 2 then. So here's my broad question. How are teenagers affected by video games? So that is just crazy broad. You could write volumes and volumes on that as well. So in question 2B, I said, well, do violent video games affect the attitudes of teenagers negatively when played on a daily basis? So what aspects have I used to narrow that one down? Yep, I've given it a time frame. They're using the video games on a daily basis. Comparison. Yes, type of violent video games, absolutely. I've created an aspect of violent video games. Yep. Well, that you changed now was the effect and possible cause. Yes, absolutely. Aspect. Good job, guys. Okay, now the last question. Comparison. Oh, yes, comparison. Let's see. So I guess comparison might be the attitudes of the teenagers. We're looking at the attitudes of the teenagers and comparing it to a daily basis versus there's definitely a potential for comparison there. We're comparing it on a daily basis as opposed to just casual playing. Absolutely. Okay, so looking at question 3A, When in US history did African American people have the most political power? So again, that's a very broad research question. You could write books and books on it. And then looking at question 3B, how does the political power of Reconstruction era Senator Hiram Rhodes Revels compare to that of Civil Rights Movement era Senator Edward Brooke? Okay, yes, I have added an aspect. I've added aspects to it. Absolutely. Specific people comparison. Yes, absolutely. I've added time periods. We're comparing two people and two time periods. Geography. Let's see. There could definitely be a geography aspect, and that could be a further way to narrow it. Absolutely. We could look at specifically, well, we are looking at a geography because we're looking at where Senator Hiram Rhodes Revels was a senator, which I believe was in North Carolina, and Senator Edward Brooke. So we would be comparing those two. Great job, guys. I feel like you're totally getting this. This is awesome. All right, so do you guys have any questions about how, strategies for narrowing your research topic before we move on? Okay. Now it's gonna make me go through everything again here with my presentation. Okay, back to the home screen. All right, so last but not least, we're going to talk about drafting a research plan. Drafting a research plan is going to help you clarify your thought process and objectives in writing your paper. Have any of you written an outline before writing a research paper? Yeah, okay, so Eden has, Ella has. And I think that's a pretty like standard first step. So a research plan is very similar to an outline. However, it's basically just a blueprint that you can refer to when you're writing your paper. So very similar to an outline in that way. And I am going to show you an example of a research plan, but this is just like a general guide for information to include in your research plan here under what information to include in your research plan. However, you will always want to make sure that you're following your teacher's instructions again, so they may want you to hit specific points in your research plan. If they don't, this is a guide that you can, if they don't give you any specific instructions, this is a guide that you can follow. So always first you want to list your research question. And then I think it's a good idea to just provide general background information on your topic. So you want to provide some context for your research question. Next, you want to list the specific questions you're exploring, and you want to explain how they will help answer your research question. So how are you going to achieve answering your research question in your paper, essentially? Next, you want to specify exactly what type of data you're going to use to support your thesis. And I am going to talk to you about specific types of data, the two specific types of data today. And then lastly, you want to cite any sources you found in your literature review that you plan to refer to in your research paper. So that's a good general outline for a research plan. Moving on to types of research. So there are three main types of research. There is scientific research. Can you guys think of any examples of scientific research? They're probably going to be using the scientific method, right? And they may even be conducting their own research study. So creating vaccines, very pertinent in our current life. Scientists who are doing scientific research can create vaccines. Physicists do scientific research, right? Okay, so the next type of scientific research is research in the humanities. And that's going to be your historical research, like my example of prohibition, or literature or art. That's okay. Yeah, Eden, I'm sorry, I don't know what you said, but it's totally fine. No big deal. Okay, so history, literature, and art are examples of research in the humanities. And then there's original or primary research. And the purpose of that type of research is to produce new knowledge. And this very, very frequently happens in the math and science fields. Do you guys have any questions about types of research? Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to our data types. So no matter what type of research you're doing, scientific, historical, original, you're going to use data to answer your research question and support your thesis. And there are two main types of data, quantitative and qualitative. So quantitative data is when researchers use mathematics and statistics to analyze numerical information. So they're breaking the data down into numbers, percentages, totals, averages. This is all quantitative data. So an example of quantitative data would be measurable information, like comparing the shoe sizes of everybody in this class. Weight is quantitative data. Exam scores, this is all quantitative data. Any questions about quantitative data before we move on to qualitative? Okay. All right, so qualitative data. Like number of, yes, that is an excellent example of the number of COVID-19 cases. And, you know, when you're looking at that data, there's a lot of information to take into account there, right? I mean, you're looking at it, but it's not an actual total. That's only the number of COVID-19 cases that, you know, what we are getting, the information we're getting are only the total of diagnosed COVID-19 cases, right? How many are going undiagnosed? There are definitely a lot of considerations to look at when you're examining data. So that's a really great example. Okay, so qualitative data. So qualitative data is when researchers generate information by observing something. This type of information cannot be expressed with a number. So an example of this is scientists who learn about animal behavior by studying them in their natural habitats. Does that make sense? And oftentimes surveys or interviews are examples of qualitative data. When I was working on my master's degree, plant behavior, absolutely. Yeah, scientists will watch how plants move, you know, to reach the sunlight. That's a good example. When I was in graduate school, I had to come up with a research study and generate my own data and grow. Yes, absolutely. And so we had to watch people interact with a website and then make suggestions on how to improve the website. So that is an example of, based on what we observed, that is an example of qualitative data. Or communicate. I'm absolutely convinced that plants do communicate. Absolutely. And eat. Yes, yeah, you totally have it. Totally got it. All right, so here is our example of, this is my example research plan. So here's my research question, of course. Did laws related to the sale of alcohol after the ratification of the 18th Amendment cause crime to rise in Huntsville in the 1920s? Okay, and here's my background for it. The 18th Amendment was ratified in January of 1919, banning the production, importation, transportation, and sale of alcohol. Criminals often took over the production and sale of alcohol while it was banned. So what I'm just doing here is I'm writing down what I already know about my topic, and I'm setting the scene for my research paper, right? Okay, and then here are my aims. So I'm going to use quantitative data, right? So I'm going to use numbers to determine if there was an increase in crime in Huntsville, Alabama during Prohibition. So I know that one of my objectives during my research is to find that quantitative data about crime in Huntsville. Next aim is I want to use primary sources to prove crime increase was related to alcohol. So when I say I'm going to use primary sources, and we're going to talk about them a little bit later on in another session with Miss Heather, but primary sources, of course, are going to be like newspapers, ledgers, letters, anything that court cases would be an example of a primary source that I might use while I'm trying to prove my research question or my thesis. My next goal is to use qualitative data to find out what new laws were created in Huntsville, Alabama after the ratification of the 18th Amendment. So looking at those laws, of course, laws are qualitative, that's qualitative data. But what kind of prohibition laws were created? And then lastly, I want to combine the results of the above research to establish a historically accurate narrative of the Prohibition era in Huntsville, Alabama. And then last but not least, citing your sources. So I've only got one source here, and that's just because I ran out of room. But you want to have more than one, of course, you're going to have more than one source. I just ran out of room, but when you're citing your sources, you probably want to have at least 3 to 5 for a 5 to 10 page research paper. Just depending, on how long your teacher wants your paper to be, but you want to make sure that you're citing your sources in an actual research style. And we are going to talk about that a little bit more, I think, in the third class. But this style that I've cited this source in is APA. Okay, so Eden asks, so all we have to do is remove the margins and answer the questions and we have our paper. More or less. So you're using this as a guide, right? Again, so you are going to refer back to this while you're writing your paper, Eden, but you may want to, you may find some more information that you want to include. So again, your research is going to evolve and your research plan is going to evolve. So, I might start digging into my research and I might find a specific politician that I want to talk about. And so I may go back and add them to my research paper or my aims. It is going to evolve, so it might not be exactly that simple, but laying out your aims that's really going to help you figure out what you want to say in your paper. And also, you want to keep it concise. So you want to always be making a point in a research paper. And then Eden asks, do we put our sources at the bottom of our paper? So that depends on the style that you're writing in. So if you're writing an APA, you are going to, yes, you're going to list your resources. MLA, you're going to list your resources at the end of your paper. However, in Chicago, you have to use footnotes. So each format's a little different. And if y'all tune into the third class, I'll point you towards some really great resources for citing your sources. Did that clarify for you, Eden? Great. Does anybody else have a question about this content? This is actually going to bring us to the end of our class today. So if you have any general questions, please feel free to ask. And also, if I can get back to my my main page here, it's just going to go. I'm stuck in a loop, you guys, with my presentation. Okay. So this is my email address, sworthy@hmcpl.org. So if you guys are interested in having a copy of my outline for this class, I am happy to email it to you. Just shoot me an email and let me know that you're interested, and then you can have that for your own personal use. And if you have any questions, just type them in the chat box there. We are going to be hosting a research and writing class every Tuesday in September. Miss Heather, the Special Collections Department Manager, is going to be teaching 2 of them, and I'll be teaching 3 of them. So if y'all found this interesting and helpful, then please tune back in. We'll be excited to see you again. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to end the recording. Thank you so much for tuning in.